The crew chief of the number 10 Stewart-Haas Racing Ford, which will be driven by Noah Gragson in the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series. Drew Blickensderfer had some really tough comments about the status of Stewart-Haas Racing, noting that they will have much bigger expectations than what they had last year after they had an abysmal year and failed to deliver cars that Kevin Harvick could win in. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at John Trent Racing. So this is over at SiriusXM NASCAR Radio over on X. They posted this. Stewart-Haas Racing crew chief Drew Blickensderfer said the organization as a whole needs to be better in 2024. And then they highlighted this quote here. We didn't have race cars last year that Kevin Harvick could win in, and that as a company we need to fix. Let's listen to what he had to say because I think he is probably accurate. Actually, before we hear what he has to say here, let's look at their records. This is over at Racing Reference. This is Kevin Harvick's NASCAR Cup Series stats for 2023. You can see 0 wins, 6 top 5s, 14 top 10s. Ended up, I think, finishing 13th overall. Had an average finish of 14.7, so massively underperforming his career average, which is 12.8. So a down year for Kevin Harvick, his last in the NASCAR Cup Series. If we look over here at Aric Almirola, his teammate, who's also left Stewart-Haas Racing, he had only 2 top 5s, 5 top 10s, 2 poles, finished in 22nd. Average finish of 19.6, below average even for him because he had been averaging a finish of 19.1 over his career. And then if we look at Ryan Preece, he had 0 wins, 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, 1 pole, finished in 23rd in the points, had an average finish of 20.8, which was actually, he overachieved better than his career average at 23.3. And then we've got Chase Briscoe. He had 4 top 5s, 8 top 10s, 1 pole, and average finish of 20.3, below average for Briscoe, who has an average finish of 19.1. So clearly a down year for Stewart-Haas Racing, 0 wins, and Kevin Harvick didn't even get any wins. And he has now left the organization. They have Noah Gragson and Josh Berry filling in, replacing, I guess, or taking over from Harvick and Aric Almirola. Ryan Preece and Chase Briscoe stay with the organization. So it can only go up, right? Because I hope they can't go down from there because it was not a very good year for Stewart-Haas Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series. Obviously, they did indeed win on the Xfinity side, win that championship with Cole Custer. But let's listen to what Drew Blickensderfer had to say here on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio.
We've talked about that as a management group at Stewart-Haas. The expectations are going to be a little different than they were, but what we need to see is steady progress. We think all of our race car drivers can win races and drive race cars really well. We didn't have race cars last year that Kevin Harvick could win in. And that, as a company, we need to fix, right? Like, you've got to.
So there you go. I mean, that's pretty harsh criticism. Obviously, some good self-awareness. It's good that you can recognize that you are not creating the best cars, especially when you look at your other teams that were with Ford. You saw huge gains from RFK Racing and Brad Keselowski coming over there, very much dominating much of the end of the regular season, with Chris Buescher racking up a couple of wins there. And then obviously Penske, Ryan Blaney's run in the playoffs was absolutely astounding, and then went on to win the championship. So Stewart-Haas definitely falling behind their fellow Ford teams as well.
Judge yourself on that. So getting our race cars faster will not only help these young guys, but help the whole company. And you're not going to be able to have veterans forever. You know, you're going to have to go through this cycle of young guys. Hendrick Motorsports did it 4 or 5 years ago, and people looked at them during that time, thought, man, what's going to happen? And all of a sudden, William Byron turned into a superstar, and Chase Elliott's the guy we thought he is, and everything went great. So I think Chase Briscoe and Ryan Preece and Josh Berry are great race car drivers that can win races, and I know Noah Gragson is. We just got to get, as a company, we have to perform better. And
So I really like his optimism there. He obviously has the self-awareness that they were struggling. They have a lot of problems, but he's very optimistic that they have really good race car drivers. And if they can get things fixed on the garage end and the shop end, they can really go out there and compete. So I really do like that optimism, the confidence in the drivers that they have on the team. So that is really good news, I think, to have your crew chief being very confident in the drivers overall, and obviously recognizing where your weaknesses is. That is a good thing. You need to recognize where your weaknesses. So many people can't even recognize what their weaknesses are, and it leads to their detriment. So it's good that they can actually recognize those weaknesses.
And that goes for all the Fords. You say that, and it's like, they won the championship. Well, we needed to be better all year round, all year long as a group, and especially at Stewart-Haas. We're not competing at the level with the other Fords or the other teams our size that we need to be. So improve our race cars, which I think we've done slightly. Hopefully, this dark horse is the next step for us, and we'll see. Probably Daytona, I'm sure, will be pretty good. We'll see when we go onto that West Coast swing how much better we are, but hopefully quite a bit. We've talked.
Yeah, so I think Daytona is obviously an outlier being restrictor plate racing with the draft and everything like that. The Fords have usually been pretty good. We'll see how that works with the new body type, as he was saying there, the dark horse, whether or not that affects it. I know the Fords kind of had the advantage when they were able to push the cars, just the way their noses were built and everything like that. They were always talking about that, at least when they were doing the announcing. And it seemed like they did indeed have that advantage, because you'd see other cars kind of try and push someone and they'd create a wreck or whatever if they were pushing really hard. But the Fords didn't really have that problem. But I do think the real test is when they go out on that West Coast swing and how well the Fords compete there. Obviously, high expectations over at RFK Racing and Penske, especially with the gains that Brad Keselowski made over there at RFK. I think there's massive, massive expectations for them to perform well and do even better than what they did last year, especially that performance at the end of the year last year. And then obviously Penske continuing what they've been doing for the past 2 years, winning the championship. We'll see what Stewart-Haas can bring. I do think, as he says here, that West Coast swing will be a really good testing ground to see where they're at compared to the rest of the NASCAR teams. But some interesting commentary here from Drew Blickensderfer. I really think that he's hitting the nail on the head, at least, on recognizing where they're bad at. Their cars sucked, and he's willing to recognize that. And he also thinks that they have some really good talent in the driver's seat too, and he's optimistic at where they're moving forward, and seems to indicate that they have indeed made improvements to the car. So time will tell whether or not that optimism pays off. And whether or not he needs to be going back and finding exactly what is making those cars not perform to the capability that they should be performing. But let me know what you guys think about what Drew Blickensderfer had to say here. Let me know in the comments below.